Well, welcome everybody. This is actually a new format. Most of you may not feel it if you've already been using Clear One, but for those of you that were with us when we were doing, all of the crazy different stuff from YouTube over to Zoom, and then we would stream Zoom onto Facebook. Literally, we've been able to walk away from Zoom completely, so there's no more hooks to it. We've got no more, and I'm actually kind of just showing folks real time. So this is going to be a different experience. So if it's the middle of the morning or night and you don't want to share your camera, you don't have to. But it's nice to actually start bringing a community together and everybody actually starts seeing who they are. I also think it's wise. This may, I'm actually a person that looks at life from the glass is absolutely more than half full, so to speak. But on the same time, I wouldn't use full names. So when you log in next time, just use your first name as you start using the digital world. So as you use your Clear phone or other decentralized phones, and we'll talk about decentralized phones, it's not just about Clear phones. You will start, and actually I need to kick on I'm going to kick on a recording here. What's gorgeous is we don't have to record everywhere else. So it's actually all the recording stuff is dynamic. And by the way, this recording doesn't go into Zoom storage that can be meta tagged, profiled, pulled up. It actually goes into the individual storage if you're using
Recording
Clear
is
One.
on.
So there it is. So welcome. Today is actually Tuesday, October 18th. This is 2022. For those that are not aware, we're grateful for you taking the time. This is a ripple effect. The agenda is real simple. We go through any kind of new advancements or tools or technologies for 30 minutes, and then we go through general Q&A for 30 minutes. We're joined by a couple folks. I actually haven't even looked at all the folks that are with us. Wally, let's see who's here. So we've got Wally, L, Terrence. Thanks, buddy. So there's three moderators here. So again, as a reminder, this is not a support session, but if you do have support questions, don't feel shy to ask the folks that are providing the support. You can direct message them right within this system. So in other words, you can literally see somebody, click on them, send them a message. Like literally just send them a private message just like that. So I'm teaching you with the tools that we're actually using in real time instead of usually I've never show you the back end of how all this works, but I think it's important for you to know this so that you can actually help use these tools and then also do it yourself. So we're grateful for these other folks that have joined us, and we're grateful for you. We're grateful for you taking the time to seek to then be understood, as Mr. Covey would say. Um, This is a private membership association, so the content herein is for private members of either the digital world and or ClearUnited. For those that are not looking for that and they're looking for other kinds of topics, there are forward-looking statements that may be made herein. This is a complex animal to roll out, even though you may think it's not. But in the user's experience, it's going to be very um, simple. Like I logged in this morning on a Clear phone, and this will work on any Android phone now. But you actually just go to the website, the QR code pops up on the screen, and it automatically logs you in. You don't even have to put your fingerprint on if you've already verified with whether it's Digital Life or Clear Life. But the point that I'm driving at is this is a very complex model, but at the same time, it's really simple. We're combining a decentralized phone, decentralized storage, and enabling a whole new ecosystem, kind of like what we see here, a whole new community of folks that can actually come together. They can connect, they can actually transact. So we're going to have a transaction here in a little while. I'll show the other ones, other individuals this may be new to how that actually works. um, so I hope you understand there's topics that are forward looking around really integrating this strategy together, which is a decentralized phone connected in with decentralized storage. And what does that mean? These phones, these new types of decentralized phones, and I'll pull up some examples. This is a slide deck that's an old one. I'm going to jump over here and go through some slides. In the digital world, those of you that know ClearUnited, Clear Cellular, all the different brands, you come to understand, by the way, we're actually streaming this on the new AT&T signals on a Clear phone that actually For those of you that moved over to AT&T, first off, thank you for your patience. Second off, you will be able to get high speed, not just internet on the phone, but also high speed tethering with it as well. So hotspot. So what I'm actually showing you today is fully using that same system. But the point that I'm driving at is there's Clear phones, and you may be aware of the Clear phones, but there's actually other types of phones that will continue to be released in the ecosystem. They use decentralized logins, but they will also have a certain type of image that's unique based upon a profile or what's called an archetype. So some folks may say, I'm a freedom fighter, or I'm just a patriot, or I'm just some people call it Republican. For those that are, I was asked this question this last week because we've got debates in the United States for different senators. And I was asked, are you going to run for office? And I just want to put this out there. Zero desire and interest ever to run. Why? Because I think that it's not a matter of building these hierarchical systems or a type of government that then controls or puts in place or manages or serves, however they want to call it, others. That's not what it's about. It's about people connecting and serving others, but not with a centralized system. And what I mean by that is specifically this model right here. And it's really what this whole system enables. Decentralization is actually the key. And so the dedication is not to run for office, but to help build a decentralized world and ecosystem where humanity can literally serve one another. Oh, you know what? I'm actually doing this wrong. Dang it. I got to do this over here. I got to share a screen. Sorry. So for those that are online, did I share this? No. How do I share this puppy? This is a, there we go, right there. For those of you that were online, because it's like hitting 4 or 5 different channels. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over. Thanks for fumbling through that with me. So for those of you that are on here, I also have to share it as well. Because that's funny. You're not even seeing. Sorry. Okay, so now you're going to see yourselves, but we'll jump back over to the slide deck. I'm going to start over. So they're going to jump. You guys should all see my screen now, right?
I'm just watching the sunset.
Yeah, that's actually the goal of tonight. So the goal of tonight is to actually watch a sunset go down. I checked the sunset. It's at about 7 minutes after this gets over. So when the sun's gone, we should know that we're about done. So again, this is a ripple effect. Today is Tuesday, October 18th. The agenda is real simple. We're going to review new tech, and we're going to review any questions that you have. If you have questions, please direct them to these folks. Thank you for your time and your attention and for being here, and for those that actually had to go through that intro again, because I just started streaming, and that's actually where we'll pick up the recording. This is a private membership association. There are forward-looking comments that may be made around a crazy new decentralized model that's literally for the betterment of humanity. So we don't have these centralized systems that are literally running, controlling our will. Most people may not even feel it today, but I promise you, within the next 12 months, 24 months, once these digital currencies, as some people call them, CBDCs, they're digital currencies that are central banks in different jurisdictions. When I say jurisdictions, I'm talking about different parts of public ecosystems that are really private combinations. Some people call them government, and I was asked this earlier, and I'll make a comment. People asked if I actually have a desire to run for office, and absolutely not. What we're focused on is building a decentralized world for humanity for the future. And that's a very big task. And ultimately, it's not just for a 4-year term or for a 3-year term or whatever country. I mean, I don't know, Russia, it may be a 40-year term, whatever. But the point that I'm driving at is no, the best way to serve humanity is by building systems that are built on open source, open standards that actually build decentralized systems that enable the individual to actually own their own life, own their own data, but ultimately own their own choice. And that's what this model is all about. So thank you for taking your time. There may be pieces of it that we touch on with the digital world, which is also a private membership, which is actually what all of these ecosystems are for. But with that being said, I'm going to jump into the digital world. And for those that have not logged into this, this is the version 1 of the current website. and we may end up going through additional versions, which I can drop in a second. It's important for the individuals that are using ClearPhones to understand how to use them. And I'm going to show you how to actually log in. I'm going to show you some basic things, because next is going to start the voting process. And the voting process is going to be where certain systems, like these services from identity, storage, health, marriage, land management, company management, passports, domains. Domains are like web domains. Like this right here, digitalworld.earth is actually a web domain. So that web domain is a digital presence that you have. And it really, what it is it's an IP address that resolves to a what they call a URL, or a top level domain. And really what that does is it creates an ecosystem where people can build. And what we're building with the digital world is a decentralized interface. And I know that it may just say, you know what, this is just a website. It's just a URL, but it actually is integrated and interacting. So see this little QR code over here on the right? I can actually log into that. You're like, well, great, I can, there's people that can log into stuff all over the place. Is that anything new? But when you actually understand how decentralized phones work, I know the sun's in your eyes, but these decentralized phones actually you get, and I'm going to show you an image while we're doing this. So you actually get 12 words. In this case, it's 24, which is it represents a hash code, which is a cryptographic code. When people say crypto or cryptographic, what is that? It's really just math. So we're proving by math that something happened. And by the way, for those of you that haven't heard me before blab about it, people talk about Bitcoin as this big thing. And you know what Bitcoin is? It's done a lot for humanity. It's been a very good proof point or litmus test that cryptography or math will actually work to do something, to secure something, to hold value in something, to move something around. But in the future, it's going to do so much more. And really, this didn't start with Bitcoin. It goes way back before 2008, 2009, when individuals came together and basically stood on other individuals' shoulders. So a guy named Craig Wright actually helped author a document which he actually created from others' work, or at least parts and pieces of it. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't brilliant in his own right, because he absolutely is and was. He's still alive. But what he did was he actually took content from two or three other individuals and helped put it together so humanity could actually start using it. And this actually came right after, I don't know if you remember, the 2008 housing crash. So really what happened was you had a bubble here in the US, which actually cascaded throughout the rest of the world, primarily because mortgage-backed entities in the US which is actually leading other parts of the world. And so what that really meant is appraisals on homes were based upon square footage, and credit was not actually followed through with a lot of verification. So did people have income? Did people have cash flow? Could people service a debt? And when certain things started crashing and people couldn't service that debt, you lived in a system that imploded. There are multiple other reasons. I believe the biggest reason is humans, particularly in the US, were using more or consuming more than they were providing value of what they were consuming. And what I mean by that is, and you got to kind of back up and understand, why is the US even a trusted leader in a lot of this stuff historically been? It's because the US, one, is a consumption-based society where we actually consume, and through consuming, it drives a cash need or a want. And like, you go over to other countries and you see people that are content, and I would even say are more happy than even the most wealthiest American that you could ever find. But they all do they have, you could even argue they don't even have a home. They live in a tent. They figure out their food the same day. You know, in most cases, which is crazy, they actually do have a cell phone. But we'll talk about that in the future. The point that I bring all this up is the Clear companies started in 2009 after all this stuff kicked off. When I say it kicked off, really what happened was a reincarnation of what's called blockchain, which is really math, which is really crypto, which is really cryptography. All that stuff kind of blended together, but it actually created a model where you decentralized a transaction onto multiple different devices that actually what they call uses a ledger to verify it. Now, it didn't start in 2008, even though, or 2009. It actually started way earlier than that. It actually started way back in 1991. So this was long, long before most folks. I actually personally got into the industry in 1992. And so I've been in it for 26 years. This gentleman that actually started this, there were two gentlemen that actually started the first one that was put into production on October 13th. His name is Scott. Wonderful man. For those of you that have been following us, we kind of take pictures with him, and we saw him back in DC 2 weeks ago. But really, one of the things I love about him is his humility. Absolutely kind individual that is driven for really the same thing we talked about before, the betterment of humanity. And a big thing that drives him is connection, family, genealogy. And those are similar things that kind of drove a lot of the drivers around what we've been building with the Clear companies for the last 12, 13 years. Now, meeting Scott has only happened this year. A lot of the understanding, and people have to understand, well, why did Satoshi actually, why was that name came up? And if you understand Scott, he actually speaks Japanese. But when you start understanding some of the history behind it, these people could actually be massively targeted. When I say these people, the 3 or 4 people, namely 4 that were involved, notice the sun going down, were involved with creating Bitcoin, could actually be targeted. If you keep going, for instance, I personally have a very dear friend. I hired him from Dell in Texas, moved him here to Utah. He wasn't my friend. I didn't know him before we hired him, but and we won't use last names. We'll just talk about his first name. His name is Carl. Wonderful man, good father, better husband than I, and has 6 wonderful kids, and literally moved from Texas up to Utah and started. This was before this timeline ever started. We started this. So let me back up. For 13 years, we helped build centralized systems in a whole economy called the managed service provider ecosystem. It's a $256 billion economy today. But for the last 13 years, what you see this timeline, we've been building decentralized systems. Now, Carl was the one that actually introduced me to decentralized systems, or what was known as the Satoshi white paper. This was about 3 or 4 years after he started working for a company that we started, Wally and Elle and many others that are on this call actually helped start this business as well. But way back in 2000, we started this, and by 2008, we were ranked number 1 in the world in this whole new industry and category. You can look it up. It was called Direct Point. Search Direct Point, Michael Proper, MSP Mentors Top 100, and you'll basically find it. I don't know if I can do it real quick. MSP Mentor Top 100, Direct Point, Michael. The reason I have to use my name, I don't know if this will come up. See if we get lucky here. Usually when I search it, it doesn't. Nah, perfect. Okay, so this whole industry, MSPs, managed service providers, it didn't exist in 2000 when we started. You can see this is 2008, okay? So I don't know if you see that date there. But if you scroll down, they basically rank. So it's really intelligent. So they look at the health of the business, the customers and adoption year over year, the customer loyalty. So it's called an NPS on a scale of 0 to 10. What's the likelihood of you recommending us to a friend or colleague? And then they look at revenue adoption and profitability. And what I'm driving at is this is a list of 100 all the way through the world. And I like to point out this one from New Zealand all the way at the bottom, but all the way here, like my point is we literally, so this Direct Point organization literally helped build this managed service provider industry. Now, what's important to know is this managed service provider industry, now keep in mind, I'm talking about service providers. It's a type managed service provider. But the point that I'm trying to drive at is this whole industry was literally built from a centralized standpoint. And we were able to see technology and centralization at the same time. If you read a book from Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, you'll start understanding why certain ecosystems evolve in certain ways. And you may understand why you're actually on this call today. But the net is we literally drive decentralization instead of centralization because of the understanding that we had from that prior year from 2000 to 2008. Now, in 2009, literally Carl had actually amassed about, I don't know what Bitcoin's at today, but at today's value, it's probably $7 to $8 billion in Bitcoin. And, back then it wasn't anywhere close to the value that it is today. And back then, I didn't really even care about it. I remember lighting up miners. Him and I, we'd literally right in the same place that we physically are sitting today. He would come over, we would do it. We were doing it on different machines, but it was trying to understand the technology behind it, not trying to get Bitcoins. The race was not for Bitcoins. For him, he had 120,000 of them, and it didn't matter. For me, I'm a technologist. I care about how can we as humans actually use this technology better. For instance, when I started in the 90s, I would actually go in and do security consulting for certain companies. And that's what I basically did. I worked for a company named Calculated Research and Technology. You can look it up. It's still in business. Let's see if we look cr-t.com. I actually registered this domain. This is one of the first domains I ever registered. And this is a business that actually does managed services. And I worked with some wonderful people that literally, they do it in a certain region and they have a certain type. But the company that we had the epiphany to create was you combine hardware, software, and services for a predictable monthly fee, and then you basically give it to the world. Now, what we did it for was not the phone. It was everything but the phone. It was for printers, it was for servers, it was for PCs, it was for laptops. We didn't do the phones. But we got really good, like literally customers, all 50 states, 29 countries, not with CRNT. They focused here in Utah. But with Direct Point, which was actually, it's broken into 3 different divisions. The consumer division, which is growing crazy right now. It's got about 750 team members here in Utah. And then the business divisions, which broke into like 3 or 4 different business units. You can look it up under, I want to say, and Wally, maybe you could pop me a URL for Direct Point 7 if you find it. And actually, I think I've got my other system open, so you can pop it on the other chat system as well. And then the printer division was sold to Hewlett Packard. So the reason I give you all of this kind of context is it gives you a baseline to understand the history of way back in 1991, October 13th, when Scott actually created the first Bitcoin and what it was, or blockchain deployment. And what it was actually a timestamp. So it says this address did this thing at this time, and then had multiple systems that validated that actually happened. Not just validated, but they peered with one another to say this is actually a transaction, even though this system with this IP in this location says that it happened. If it goes offline, this other one can validate it as well. And for those of you that don't understand how we're even connected, the National Science Foundation funded a project to actually build the internet as we know it today. Now, when you take the internet and you layer on that type of redundancy, in effect, what you've done, and when we would deploy these servers, we would deploy them. I hope you keep up with this. But technical folks, this will make a lot of sense. When you deploy the servers, you actually put multiple disks in them. And they usually have power supply, CPU, memory, but the disks are where the data is. And when you put one, for instance, like you could do RAID 3 or 0 or 5 or 10, when you put 3 disks together, like for RAID 5, that means one hard drive at any given time can go away. And so what Scott did was he used that same architecture for RAID on a system. So instead of using memory, CPU, and disk in one system, I wonder if I've got a device that I can kind of point to. So these systems, instead of having lots of hard drives in the systems, you literally just replace the whole system as one device on an internet infrastructure that would basically, you could take the system offline and it would still function. So if you really understood what I just went through, what I just talked about, it's a model that changes how data can be tracked and stored. And I should also say validated. So when all we're doing is intelligently adopting that same model for the individual that actually owns their own phone. And it doesn't just have to be a clear phone, and I'm retracing some things, but it doesn't just have to be a clear phone, because there will be many phones that use this same technology. Today, there's 3 different brands: the Freedom Phone, the Clear Phone, the Armor Phone. We're actually sold out. We're sold out of the 220 on this one. This guy, there's some units of this, which is probably the most price effective. So if you haven't seen them, you can literally go pick them up. But they build with different images for different users, or what we call archetypes. So you may like, and it doesn't really matter because you can still download other apps, but the apps that come pre-installed on them are for a certain use case. So first responders, people that are caring about working in a dirty environment, maybe, mud and water, and you got to have battery for a long period of time, and the flashlight has to be different. You have to be able to take certain vitals, not just certain things from a face around maybe what's your pulse, what's your oxygen level, what's your oxygen saturation level, all of those things, but also maybe things around, are you standing up? Are you standing down? Or what's your temperature? All these different types of things is built into this Armor phone. A Clear phone is actually a phone that is made for individuals who just want a turnkey decentralization. And it will be something where people can tell other people and then build an ecosystem and awareness around that. So not only is it about just making money or distributing money, it's much bigger than that. It's actually how you drive awareness, but at the same time, you're distributing certain assets. Is it perfect today? No. Is it going to be a massive part of the future? Absolutely. So for those of you that are here, again, this is a ripple effect for ClearUnited members for that particular phone. Then we talk about the Freedom Phone, which really has some super, and I'll pull up the website real fast. So Freedom Phone has some super influencers. One of the best is Candace Owens. So if you're familiar with Candace, she literally is just an amazing.
Okay, Instagram. I'm sorry, I kind of look at dirt. Where in the world?
So the point that I'm driving at is, there are individuals that saw the need for this and want to launch it to the world, but they also wrap their own look, feel, design on it. And when we back up to what this model is about, and remember, we talk about all these negative things around secret combinations, private, public, but really there's a solution to it, and it's around decentralization and ultimately open source, which means living the law of consecration in software development. And what I mean by that is, no one owns it, no one controls it, we all benefit from it, but people can put their own spin on it. They can put their own flavor on it. And that's really what's happened with a lot of these different technologies that are out there. So with that being said, everyone has an opportunity to tell someone about this, or at least to get involved. And even when Scott, Craig, Conrad, myself, many of the individuals that have a history in helping to make this become a reality pass away, the heart stops, our breath stops, because all of us, I don't think we really recognize, all of us are going to go through that. But when that happens, how can the next generation actually pick that up? And a lot of you may say, well, I don't understand this, but I'm going to type ClearOS and I'm going to type GitLab. For those of you that are like, well, yeah, right, show me the code. It's on Git Hub, but this is actually the main repository. So there's lots of different projects. Literally, you can jump into some of these. For instance, this one has, under the Clear Foundation, 220 or 255 different what's called repos. This is where software is actually so the systems do a ton. And I won't dig into all the technology behind it, but this is actually what open source is, where people can actually come in, take parts and pieces of one thing. And when I say one thing, I'm talking about a model, this model, where you can take a phone. There goes some birdies. You got to understand the ClearOS mobile and ClearOS server are built to go together, but they're built off of open source technologies from around the world. And they actually then link together. And I'm going to be very specific. ClearOS server. If you go here, clearos.com, this is ClearOS server. Okay. You can download the open source part of it. You can put this on a node and you can run your own ecosystem. So when we look at the server side of it, this is literally a firewall, intrusion detection, content filtering. It's got tons of stuff. If we jump into the marketplace, this has over 150 different applications, kind of like your phone, but this is built for your home or your office. And it can come on the little devices like these here, which are not built yet. The prototypes are, and we actually purchased a wonderful company behind this. Or it can come on devices like these. These are higher end devices that are building the main ClearNode infrastructure that does both validating and storage. And so what this is all about is really a model that comes together around a phone and a node that has an operating system on both of them that are built to work together. So ClearOS Mobile is a fork of Android. ClearOS Server is a fork of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which was bought by IBM, which is the #1 server manufacturer in the world. Well, that's not true. It was the largest software, open source software purchase, $32 billion in cash. Maybe somebody fact check me. It was either 24, no, the closest one to that was 24 billion, and that was bought by Lucent from the folks that actually, that was Rob Ryan's company that actually helped start the internet. Whole nother conversation there, but there's a beautiful conversation. He actually looked at this business and he said, well, I won't even go there. So we're talking about mobile, an operating system for the phone built off of Android. We're talking about ClearOS Server, an operating system built for the node, a fork from Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We're talking about systems like the space station, most banks, the banks that actually run like the old tandem systems that was acquired by Compaq or DEC and then by Hewlett Packard. And then it just, all the stability behind the current financial system goes way back into the methodology on how this is all built. For instance, the stock exchange as well as financial system use the technology to actually do all of their FedWire, ACHs, how do you bring banks up, even before the internet, on tandem systems. Tandem basically took the same stuff I was telling you about. They would take a server, motherboard, CPU, disk, and they would duplicate it, and they would have two servers inside that would load balance off of one another, storage included. So what we've effectively done, instead of having banking adopt one server with two different componentry that's duplicate and running in a type of high availability, because here's the reality: you cut both power cables, and it's done. But what we try to do as humans is we try to create this high availability for computing and how we as humans use technology. It's so much bigger than that, because it's not just a matter of banks staying up, but it's like, I'm gonna jump over here. I hope I don't embarrass you if you got your video on, but it's how do all these people here come together? Thank you for changing your names, by the way. How do people come together in such a way where we can actually communicate, we can collaborate, we can share screens? I mean, most of these folks, when I come off of here, will actually be able to see this screen that I'm sharing. At least I hope they are. My point is the internet was built with funds from the National Science Foundation to actually overcome nuclear war. Why? And where did the technology originate from? So let's go back. No, let's actually look at today. What's going on in the world? We're talking about war. Talking about seeing what is happening today. And it's but I don't agree that we actually need to jump to another planet to save humanity. One of the biggest drivers, it's a concern about war. I can tell you that History repeats itself. Why? Because we're natural humans, born with instincts. We're instincts to naturally be greedy, naturally have pride, naturally have egos, and also naturally want to actually reproduce, which I think is one of the biggest drivers of all of us, at least if you're healthy and you're driven and blah, blah, blah. But the point is a lot of the things that drives him to actually get onto another planet is he sees what's happening from within the human and looking at history and then at data. Russia has almost 4,000, almost 5,000 nuclear warheads. And to be honest with you, I think there's bigger issues than anything nuclear, even though the last World War in 2005 was actually solved by nuclear war, or I should say a couple nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and others. It's so much bigger than that. Where there's mystery, there's margin. That's how companies make money. Is it stop with companies? Or is there countries that actually, or governments that will actually be controlled by these secret elements, these secret combinations that we talk about? Are there governments that are put in place based upon people in health or pharma or tech or media or finance? Absolutely. Why? Because we're all human. You can have a board that's created of independents and they all go and do something that's totally wrong. The point is we are to a point where technology can actually be used for the betterment of mankind. When I say mankind, I'm talking man, woman, monkey, and whatever other kind of identities everyone wants to come up with. But ultimately, really what we're talking about, and especially this slide, is we're talking about good versus evil. And ultimately, good versus evil that takes away choice and freedom, which I believe is a gift that we've all been given. And it's something that has to actually shift in how it's deployed to the human race. Because how we're currently doing it, where every single device, like the ones I was telling you about, they come up online. If they hit a private network, a public network, they can actually be taken over. And I know a lot of people are like, nah, he's crazy. But I promise you, there's not a lot of people that have been in security for 26 years in the technology industry. I was blessed and guided on so many ways to have an opportunity to be educated in the actual field of doing it. And I'm telling you, every single device, whether on a private network or on a public network, literally can be compromised. Not just not just at the data layer or transport layer, because that's what's happening, is every single piece of data that is transmitted, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a sharing, like all of us coming together. I don't know about you, but is this more complicated to use than Zoom? But when we use this technology can actually not be profiled. And what I mean by that is there's a setting inside of here, like if you actually really wanted to, you can actually encrypt the whole ecosystem. So if you're a member of the digital world or ClearUnited, you get this technology. It's just a part. It's come in. I'm going to pull sleeves down. It's getting cold, but it's literally come in and use this technology instead of the centralized technology. Why? The goal is to give the individual the data. So what I would argue, or at least plead with you, is go to clear.co.com, and there's a couple articles that are really, we talk about this one right here. This is a good one. It's talking about the difference between the meta world and the digital world. And really, when people talk about metaverse and really a lot of things that not just Facebook is doing, but many others, there's a reason why Facebook changed their name from Facebook, which was one of the biggest brands in the whole world. They turned it from a company into a product and named the company Meta. What does Meta mean? So back to the point that I was making earlier, every single piece of data, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's a web search, is meta tagged and then copied and stored right here over that mountain. Actually, about 4 or 5 of those mountains. And actually, when we moved here, there's a book, and I'm gonna bring this up. this book, Strategic Relocation by Joel Skousen. Here we go. So this is what it looks like. When we moved back to the United States from New Zealand, we read this book. We studied this book. Now this is, I think, the 4th edition of this book. So 4th edition right there. So what it does is it talks about data, physically where you are, and what happens when certain things occur. What I mean by certain things are financial systems that have real problems, physical systems that have real problems. I'm talking about electricity, water. I'm talking about war. And over those mountains, there's actually maps that you can look up. And I don't want to actually scare folks, but I actually haven't looked at this in a very long time. What do we call it? Nuclear emulator. But you can basically come to one of these sites. I'll have to pull up a couple of them. And you can actually see if this is this a good one? Not. See if this one does it. So what this will do is it'll let you select a warhead. Actually, this isn't what I was looking for. What I was looking for was you can actually start, you can see the different targets, and this is not what I was going after. But what it does is it actually shows you the type of megaton nuclear warhead, and then how much population would actually die on impact and what kind of fallout would have. And what they're doing is they're looking at population density and they're looking at radiation fallout. And why are we talking about this kind of a conversation when ClearUnited is all about a phone and the phone's all about technology? Why would we bring up something like this? Well, I'm trying to point out that literally, let's just say that this happened. The goal of the internet was originally to actually keep communication systems up. Now, why are communication systems important? When we go back over to this war topic, like here, what was one of the first things that Elon stepped in to say, you know what, we'll help keep those systems up? It was satellites, right? It was communications with satellites. We're getting some feedback somewhere. That's that other company. Thanks, Wally. So the point that I'm driving at is, please take a pause, try and understand why the internet was created, try and understand the technological advances that we all get to live through. I think it is amazing. The ability to actually have real time, think about it, just all of us getting on this call, right? I didn't send you an invite. I didn't even send you a calendar event. I didn't even send you a link. You knew, hey, I'm going to join at this time because this dude gets on here and blabs about things that may be important. And this is the first time I've ever brought up a nuclear map. And I've told you about why certain things were done. I've showed you a book. But all I'm driving at is, please be self-reliant. If you're self-reliant, you need not fear. But you do need to be prepared. And now is the time. Now is the time. I also want to put a real solid underscore around what happens after all of these potential negatives situations. Catherine, I'm gonna put you on mute if that's okay. So actually I want to mute you. There we go. So what happens after something crazy like, let's say that this were to become a reality? And it's not just the US, it's the whole world that we've got to be thinking about. But the point that I'm driving at is, imagine 9/11. Do you remember what happened after 9/11? Do you remember how we started having kind conversations? How we started caring about one another? How we started being a family? I would even say in COVID, I don't know about you. Well, some families really came together. Some families when they came together, they actually figured out, hey, this is not a good thing. And then, you know, there's a lot of divorce, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened. But the point that I'm driving at is we lived life a different way. I would even say we found joy and happiness in a different way. Life doesn't have to be all about negativity, doom, and gloom, but we do need to be prepared. And I would argue that physical preparedness is secondary to spiritual preparedness. What's in your heart, why you're here. For instance, after this call, I actually jumped in a car with the family, and we're driving a couple states away to go and bury a wonderful family member. I actually made a plaque for him. A grandfather. I actually made in high school, I made a little globe that said world's greatest grandparents on the outside of it. I look forward to taking a picture and posting that in probably next week's, maybe this week's memories. But the point that I'm driving at is, please get very comfortable with your own mortality. Do things as though today or tomorrow were your last day. Live life. Find joy in the simple things. You know, the stewardship that we've been given over these. Here, I'll turn. I don't know if you can see my video. I mean, you guys probably may not even be able to see a video stream. I don't even know if. Yeah, they can see it online. So, I don't know if you can see here, but maybe not. Let's see. I'm going to turn this off. So enjoy things like simple things like piggies or horses or sheep or flowers, or I don't know about you, but, and maybe this is just my age, but I so appreciate these dingy, simple things, the smells and the way, the shapes that these flowers come in. I mean, just this, the trees, like, look at this tree, look at this. I won't go too far, but well, maybe I will. Look at those trees. They're red as red. Look at these I mean, the colors, the yellows, and who knows, you know, here in another month or two, it'll all be white. But, and then that's another thing. Look at the seasons. And we call it global warming. By the way, there's three things that this is all about. They're attacking the individual, they're attacking the family, and they're attacking this earth. And the earth is through this jacked up thing called global warming. And you will see me with John Kerry in a picture. And if you really read what was on that picture, I was telling John Kerry, John, and this was before, this is like 2018. It's like, what you're talking about is flawed. The whole thing is flawed. It's not global warming and energy that we've got to have concern about, because really, if we actually, and for those of you that understand physics and understand some of the truth around energy, we absolutely have solutions. I mean, the stuff that Elon's building, that stuff's been around forever. The ability to land rockets, that's been around for a long time. The ability to have electric cars, long time. But the ability to have little spinning things that create perpetual energy, it actually doesn't create it, it just combines it. This stuff is not fake. I promise you, if you go back in our timelines, we show it to you. We spell it out like 4 or 5 years ago. Problem is, you can't bolt it onto the side of a house and power the house, because it can actually be a bomb. There's so much power in it. You actually light this stuff up and you put, like, literally, you can separate them to create plasma, in atmosphere plasma. That's like a lightning bolt in atmosphere at room temperature. How would we know it's at room temperature? We put literally, what is it, Wally? I always know. It's the hardest material around. I've never forgotten this word. Tungsten. It's tungsten. So you put tungsten inside of this lightning and it incinerates it. But you also test it with a tester around the temperature, and it actually is at room temperature. That is the biggest measurement of power that I believe humanity's ever had. My point is that's room temperature power at a degree, and we're talking about little spinning devices that and you could make them out of simple elements of the earth. It's not even as complicated as a lithium ion phosphate battery. So the point that I'm driving at is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're seeing somebody else's kitchen right now with her in it.
That's because you're looking at someone else's video feed. Just click on my video feed and you'll be good. So I hope today's conversation has been a roller coaster for you. We've gone through technology. We've gone through, what the world calls blockchain. We've gone through war. We've gone through good versus evil. We've gone through, the fight between for and against the individual, against the family, which is a whole nother conversation, and against this earth. And we're not going to solve all of it, but ultimately, decentralization is actually a solution that can enable all of it for a new millennium, for the future generations. Is it going to be all solved today? Probably not. Digital asset management, company asset management, or I should say decentralized asset management, decentralized assets. So for instance, for those of you that this is new to you, I'm opening up ClearPay. Actually, I'm going to blow it away so you can kind of see how it all works. So I'm opening up ClearPay. Down here at the bottom, it uses derived keys to actually pull up what we call as a checking. So you can see the checking balances because that can be transferred in real time versus a savings balance. So this guy right here, this, like for most of you will know what Bitcoin or Ethereum is. This is actually slow assets. Ethereum, 3 minutes transfer on average. Plus you have gas fees. Bitcoin, literally it could be 8 minutes, 10 minutes on average. It's not something you can run an economy on. But so great, fast, wonderful. But what we're really talking about is the individual can create their own digital assets and they can ride on this decentralized infrastructure. So I'm going to, let's see if I've got enough time. We got 2 minutes left. If someone wants to ask some questions, we can go through that. If not, I'm going to show you actually how you can log in with your ClearPhone and actually become a part of this. So questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody? All you have to do is raise a hand. It looks like everybody's got their hands down. Now's your window if you've got questions.
Michael, what was the name of the book that you talked about with Malcolm
Gladwell? It's called Outliers.
Yeah.
Outliers.
Okay.
Great book. Great book. And if you haven't read, hey, this is cool. 2 times in a row, I've forgotten something. What was the book from Microsoft? Tools and Weapons.
Tools and Weapons.
There you go. So tools.
That's a really good one.
So if you haven't read, you should start with Tools and Weapons first, because everything that I've been telling you, New Zealand, open source, closed source, control, it's spelled out in Tools and Weapons. And you know what? The chief legal counsel wrote it and and Bill Gates forwarded it. Bill Gates didn't write it, but this chief legal counsel, who's now the president of Microsoft, literally spells out all this stuff from the things we've talked about, from open source, closed source, the fight between central systems and decentralized systems. They don't spell it out as decentralized. The ability for, literally, it talks about why they bought GitLabs or GitHub. So GitHub is different from GitLabs, but it's literally the year we started this, the Clear companies, because it's focused on decentralization, people thought we were crazy. Why? Because the president / CEO of Microsoft then said open source was, if anybody can tell me this, I'll send you 100 Clear right now. Open source was like word to the software industry. I'm going to give you 3 seconds. Some of you know how to use Google fast. Open source was like cancer. That's what he said. It's like cancer in software development. But I would argue that it's just the opposite. I would argue, in addition to that, patent systems are like cancer to innovation. So literally, patent systems were created when the US left England and said, we're going to develop our own things, and then we're going to pay people for the development of it. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to create the stock market. By the way, Stanford it actually has one of the first stock exchanges that was there, where people can basically buy and sell shares of a company. And now we're going to create this venture capitalist thing, which, by the way, is only 50 years old, to then seed those companies to then have them create liquidity events through going public. All of that stuff are 4 centralized systems. Think about it. Stock market, centralized. Patent system, centralized. If you go back to really the innovation that we started talking about, even with the power, the folks that actually helped create the light bulb and what Tesla did in and out of that was literally started at the patent office. So the key is, and imagine a digital world where someone can have an idea and they write up a little thesis on it, they timestamp it and put it out there. And they say, you know what? Everyone can build on this concept. Everyone can build on this idea. Whether you want to call it crowdsourced, open source, whatever. It happens in multiple different areas too. But I'm going to stop blabbing again. I'm going to give people an opportunity. If you have a question, raise your hand and ask it. Otherwise, I am going to just show you a demo of how to log into the ecosystem. You're probably all shy because you don't want to do it on video. So I'll take this off. Somebody unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
My husband is a skeptic.
Okay.
And doesn't understand anything about the blockchain technology or cryptocurrency or anything like that. And he says to me, it sounds amazing until the government figures out a way to be able to control everything. So how do you answer something like that? Because in my heart, I feel that this is very good for humanity. And this is going to give us autonomy, privacy, etc. But for somebody who's a skeptic, how do you answer that?
I would actually tell your husband that he's absolutely right.
Okay.
And here's the reality. We all have an opportunity to make a choice with the most valuable thing that we've been given, time. And some people, like what you're doing right now, all of you are giving me your attention. If we all give this digital world our attention, and this is what you should show your hubby. So I'm going to see if I can, am I streaming still?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, let me make sure. Oh no, you haven't actually been streaming. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing pops out because it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, and it's like on 3 channels in Facebook. So we'll see how it works. So you should see a stream now, and I'm gonna come over here, so you can see a video stream, and you should be able to see my video at the bottom. But basically, I'm logged in to Clear Life. This is what you show your hubby. Okay. I'm logged into Clear Life. I'm going to click on scan QR code. And I'm also at the same time, I could either click on membership login here, or I could just click on this uncover QR code. So I'm going to do this both at the same time. So I basically have my phone, and it's now successfully logged me in on my phone, successfully logged me in on the system. So no username, no password. What logged me in was a combination of my fingerprint that derived, or it actually unencrypted, a derived key for me to log into this system. Show your husband that. I promise you he's never seen that in his life ever. Even if he doesn't understand cryptography and the security behind it, that login capability logged into a new digital world. Now, look at all the things that will end up being combined. Phone calls, agreements, disputes, email, calendars, friends, finances, marriages, music, nodes, payments, tons of different systems inside of this ecosystem. And what does it allow you to do? And I believe what actually, go back to the root cause of your hubby's question. What was, who are the people that are behind this nightmare that we all get to live with these secret combinations? Who's behind the big tech and the big media and the health and the finance? I would argue that these secret combinations is about trusts of over, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, 2,200 trusts over $1 billion in value each. And they basically connect in these different circles, tech, media, finance, health, government, and they literally connect. And when I say government, they actually help people to get elected. Just go do research on Soros and see what he's done in other countries and see the people behind it. And here's the point that I'm driving at. Rockefeller and his family is deeply involved in pieces of this. What's the pieces that they actually come from? Big oil. How did they actually get to the place that they were at in big oil? Because really all we are is humans on top of a rock that's floating around in a universe. My wife teaches me that all the time, simplifies it down to something simple as that. And we get an opportunity to actually use the resources that come abundantly from this earth. It doesn't matter if it's fruit, vegetables, oil, lithium, you name it. And in this case, the Rockefellers basically used oil. And what did they do? They actually created companies. And the different companies that they created had different names. And no one knew that there was a linkage behind these companies. So imagine you have all these different companies, and then they have one holding company or trust that basically has shareholders that then owns the other companies. That's how the empire basically, have you ever gone to Chevron? That's how Chevron came about. Exxon, yeah. I can keep going. So they basically bought these different companies in these different regions. So they regionally bought these oil companies, and not just oil, but also gas stations. So they had the refiners, the oil, they own the whole supply chain around it. And then they take over the whole industry around really production of oil. But they did it with companies. So imagine if companies can be created, but the actual connection behind these companies, you can use intelligent forensics to actually understand commonality, but namely a reputation behind, and I'm not going to go into reputation today because there's too much, but imagine if you, like earlier today, we actually created a country, believe it or not, but it's creating a digital ecosystem that runs in parallel to the physical system. So your hubby's asking about, what if a government just takes this over? Well, I would go to him with an answer that says, what if the system can actually rebuild the government in parallel to it and actually do the same things that happen in the real world that governments actually enable? Why are governments here? They were created to serve the individual, the people, to serve them, to serve them. There are service providers inside the digital world that can actually help to serve them. What I just outlined for the last hour was how we come from a history of creating an industry called the managed service providers that actually created a whole industry which was around centralization. Why can't we do it around decentralization and free humanity from the tyranny that actually we all get to the opportunity to live with? I would ask your husband to really just ponder how much time he, as the breadwinner, as the individual that had to stress about whether it was insuring a car, buying a car, paying for kids. They say that, a kid from inception to graduation is about $1 million. And that doesn't even include inflation. But the point that I'm driving at is your hubby's had to deal with a lot of things, and you probably at the same time. But what I would say is, how much did he worry himself about taxes, about making sure that he's doing the right thing, he's disclosing the right thing, he's got the numbers way, and then 5 years later, a review or a question or a fee or a penalty? I would just try and ask him, and I don't know you or him from Adam or Eve, but all I'm saying is, this system that's supposed to serve people, is it actually serving or is it controlling? And therein lies go ahead.
There's no argument there. We both feel that we're being controlled. He just feels that, that the government has access and eventually can get into anything they want, which history has proven. So what makes the decentralized system different than what we've been living through historically?
Great context. So If I told you, which I did a little while ago, that every server, every router, every firewall, every PC, every phone actually can be hacked. So if there's a thing called Pegasus, you can go read about it on the site. Basically, if you're running WhatsApp, it can automatically get your mic and your video and your contacts and your text and stream it to a remote location. If there is a router, I mean, one of the biggest reasons why there's a massive public reality against Huawei, who actually I believe has the best hardware in innovation in the cell phone industry, over Samsung, over Apple, over Clear. Literally, they own it. Why? Because the government of China and others actually fund the development. And then they can actually control the manufacturing, and then they can control the supply chain and the whole industry. It's absolutely brilliant. But the point that I'm driving at is your comment around everything is currently violated is true. The servers, the routers, the firewalls, all of it is absolutely violated. But now here's the kicker. It's violated because of metadata. It's violated because the individual has a name, they have a phone number, they have an address, they have an IP address. The individual can actually be tracked. But what you got to turn on the lights with your hubby on is imagine if future identity is actually done from the individual, but off of who they are. Their first name and a fingerprint can verify who they are better than an ID with their first name, last name with their picture on it. So the point that I'm driving at is decentralization provides the largest threat to government because it cannot be taken down. Even though I told you earlier on who created Bitcoin, why do you think they spent over a decade in the world? Because they would be in prison right now.
Yeah. Oh, I get that.
They would be in prison because they would actually go to prison because of enabling terrorism. These men are not terrorists. These men are good men with integrous hearts. I can tell you that Scott is driven by absolute true and correct principles, and I would trust my very family with him and his posterity. He is a good human being. Now, it goes back to physical control and digital control. And if I actually snag a photo, so I'm actually going to light up my phone here. I'm going to take a photo, and you guys will see this in the in this week's photos if you guys don't see those. Imagine this photo actually turns into thousands of little pixels and pieces, and it's stored in many locations. Now, this is the direct answer to your hubby. Can the government get one? Could they access all those devices? Yeah, they could. Let's just say they could. Could they actually get the data that's on those devices? Yeah, they could. With enough time and power, they could. But with the math / cryptography / crypto / decentralization / blockchain, whatever, that model is the model that is a true and correct model of decentralization. And that is the answer to your question. These centralized authorities cannot actually control the networks. What they can control is they can control each one of you to say, just like they did the individuals in these other countries. And I'm actually going to put you front and center because it's a beautiful question. I'm going to pull this off because you're not streaming your full name. Some people are. So the point that I'm driving at is 4 countries adopted Bitcoin in the last 2 years.
San Salvador, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And every single one of those, you know what else they adopted in addition to Bitcoin? They adopted the Lightning Network, which makes Bitcoin transactions real time. Just like a Visa does. It makes a transaction real time. Do you know who owns the Lightning Network? Visa.
It's a centralized network.
It is. And do you know who owns it?
I did, but I'm not sure now.
Visa.
I did know.
Visa owns it.
That's it. Yes, that's it. Yes.
And do you know
that's
who
right.
owns Visa or started Visa? Bank of America. And basically, Visa is now a conglomerate of multiple banks. So they're all centrally controlled. So in other words, you're taking something that's decentralized like Bitcoin that 4 countries said, you know what, our financial system is just not working. We got to go down to the standard because it's a store of value. I mean, you basically have within a decade 12, 13 years, $2 trillion worth of fiat assets that have actually been transferred into it. I'm not just saying it's cash, but cash-like assets that have gone into it. Is it that big now? No. Is it going to be in the future? That's a different conversation. We will not join speculative comments. We're not here to speculate. We're not here to some get-rich scheme. We're here to say the answer to your husband's question is, if people use it and they give their attention and their time to it, it can work. That is the only way that it can work. For instance, who trusts the US dollar? I would say the majority of people on this call use the US dollar, but do you trust it?
Absolutely not.
So, I mean, literally, I won't just put you as the spotlight here. I mean, there's people from other countries on here. They have their own dollar. Do they trust the renminbi? Do they trust the Frankfurt? Do they trust the mark or the pound? Or no?
I'm in Canada. I don't trust it.
I mean, when you really look at the dollars and cents, I'm going to jump onto this slide. You know, we're talking about maybe $50 trillion in total value in assets worldwide. But when you start actually netting out how much money they're injecting into the systems right now, and this was one of the things, you talk about that book with the outliers and Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm telling you, one of the things that we had access to was information, intelligence. $91 trillion is being sprinkled into, namely, Taiwan, China, and the United States. We think right now the big war is between the Ukraine and Russia element. And I would say that's an element of a proxy war. Look who's enabling certain things. But again, this is not about taking sides. But I'm saying Taiwan, China, and the US as a settlement from the Second World War, because Taiwan actually left the China ecosystem and the US actually supported them. How did they support them? They supported them by giving them printing presses for the United States of America dollar in Taiwan. That's why Taiwan gives, you talk about intelligence, you talk about data. Taiwan is actually the linchpin in all of this. If Taiwan was not there, do you think Hewlett Packard Enterprise would actually have servers that were made? I promise you, they're all made right there in Taiwan. They're designed in Taiwan. Are they assembled in Taiwan? That's a different conversation. But the intellectual property around technology and chips and infrastructure actually comes from Taiwan as a safety net. I would argue today that's not the truth. China wants to own and control that. Not only that, but China wants Taiwan back. They want Hong Kong back. Just like Russia wants, you know, the many other ecosystems that are actually divested, which I won't even talk about bloodlines. But anyways, we've gone through a lot. I hope you understand. What we did was we actually logged in here. We can create a company. That company can then have certain types of assets. You can create digital assets and you can drop it right onto the phone. All you have to do is, like, literally, this is basically tokenizing different things in life. It could be a house, it could be a boat, it could be some land, it could be a car, it could be a bike. But imagine if you actually said, you know what, I want to go through my asset list. So I'm going to pull up a wallet here. And not only am I using derived keys, and that's the answer to your hubby right there, that derived key, because that doesn't use a centralized system. That doesn't use a centralized banking ecosystem. It doesn't use a centralized government. But I can send value to someone across the world. James, are you still awake?
With this phone, you can send money? You can send value?
James, are you still awake? It's literally the middle of the night for him. I'm gonna send him some money right now if he's available. James, give me a thumbs up.
I'm available, but I think I'm the wrong James.
Hey, no, James, you're anybody. James, no, that's a good James too. Anybody that can show me a QR code.
Yeah,
There we go. Karen, good girl. So Karen, what country are you in?
I'm in Australia.
Okay. So I'm using ClearPay. I'm actually going to scan. Now hold it still if you would. Okay.
So where do we get a QR code?
So you in your Clear phones. Notice how she has 12.37 Clear rewards right now. Show the screen there. See how it says 12.37? Okay. So notice how it's got a public key. By the way, that public key can tie to her contacts. I can actually have it in my contacts so I don't have to scan, But in this case, I'm actually going to use my wallet just like hers, and I'm going to send her value. So right now, literally, I'm going to scan her ecosystem or her QR code.
Oh, I see. Okay. I have a.
So you have ClearPay on your phone. Just update it, and you'll be in the same world that she is. Okay, Karen, you can pull that down.
So that's it there, right?
Okay, so it's asking for my fingerprint. Why is this not? I thought I already gave it. We're hearing somebody from Canada because you can hear the word process.
I'm from Canada.
I know there's something in the background. I'm actually going to start over, and this time I'm not going to scan her.
Hey man, this is such a trip, so surreal, because
Yeah, I can hear whoever's talking. You're streaming around the world. Okay, Karen, so we're going to do this again. I think your name is Karen, right? Yeah, it's Karen.
Yeah, Karen.
And the other thing is I'm running this whole meeting from my Clear phone. So I'm actually streaming it, and it's also hitting 3 or 4 different Facebook feeds, YouTube, what are the other ones? LinkedIn. And what we're going to try and do is build this recipe up and then teach others how to do the same thing.
So instead of using Zoom, we can start using this.
Oh, 100%. But what I want to actually show this because this works all the time. I updated my wallet. I was doing tests because what we're rolling out is a multi-address wallet where I can link to my contacts, and my contacts can have multiple different chains. So you can have a Bitcoin address, you can have Ethereum address, you can have a Ripple address, you can have a Stellar address, and you can have a digital world address, all with the same contact, and the contacts are decentralized online. So it'll go across all of them. But now here's the key. And this goes back to your hubby's answer as well. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw you up front and center there. So imagine a system where I can actually see my contacts. I must have broke something with my latest ClearPay update because these things usually work just flawlessly. Karen, ping us again next week. But the point that I was trying to make was I can see my contacts, but no one else can. So just like a photo can be broken into thousands of pieces, when I pull open contacts, and here I'll show you exactly. I don't know if you guys are seeing a video stream or not, but when I open up my contacts, are you seeing a video stream? Yeah.
We can see.
So when I open up I'll do that again. When I open up my contacts, notice down at the bottom where it says derived keys connected. That is actually using decentralized storage to store my contacts and rebuild them. And then when I come into one of these contacts, I actually have a QR code that builds a unique relationship. And so in other words, instead of using phone numbers, instead of using IP addresses, instead of using email addresses, you use a QR code to communicate with somebody. And this is unique based upon our relationship. And so the meta tagging and metadata of the centralized systems won't work anymore. That's innovation. But it's not just innovation. Decentralization is a true and correct principle. I wish that transaction worked there.
Are you saying that if I had you in my contact, I could have a QR code that would be for you only?
Do you have a Clear phone?
Yes, I do.
Open up your contacts.
Okay.
It's got to be clear did contacts. So what you want to do is just go to your homepage like this and scroll up. So just go up and then click on the clear icon down at the bottom.
Clear did?
Yeah. Bye, Steve. Find someone. And
You froze. Hang on, you froze.
Well, I probably shouldn't have run all this from my phone. Looks like
Okay,
I'm still
so
streaming. So click on
scroll up.
a contact. Go to ClearDid contacts. So you see where it says ClearDid? ClearDid?
Where's ClearDid? Oh, yes, ClearDid. Yes, gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
Now once that's going to have your contacts. I hope your contacts are actually there. Do you see your contacts?
I'm trying to import them now.
So do you have any contacts in there at all?
Yes, I do.
So click on one of them. And then you see where it says DID. Click on that and it should show a QR code. If it does, show the audience.
Oh my God, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, for
So,
goodness sake.
so what this is doing is it's taking away phone numbers and names and email addresses and physical addresses and everything. And it turns in that QR code is unique to the person that you're actually trying to connect to.
Oh my God.
And every single person has a different connection. The technology that's behind this, that particular technology was written by a guy named Sam Smith. Actually, here, I'll show him on the Clear team. Wonderful man. Absolutely divinely led. He's a PhD, just like some of these others that are but they're driven by true and correct principles that are not. It's like, this is Sam right here. So this gentleman is actually the one that created the technology. He didn't actually implement it. Another brilliant soul did as well. But this gentleman literally created that particular process around barcodes. Now, this other gentleman, Richard Dick, this gentleman right here, another PhD that's absolutely brilliant, he actually created what now the world calls data privacy around HIPAA, which is a big lie. Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act was actually there to protect people. Yeah. This gentleman, he personally wrote the actual policy that then became HIPAA. And he says, Mike, we must rebuild this and get it implemented the right way for humanity. He's another amazing individual that helped build this. This gentleman around health as well. I won't even talk. I mean, talk about communicating with the body through yes or no questions. Talk about Rife. This gentleman is, as a matter of fact, I'll bet you already personally know people that use his system. And then there's others. I won't even be specific.
I have a Rife machine. Wow, this is, I can't believe this. So
some of the others we took off by design, but I'm going to show you this gentleman here also helped to build some of that technology that is literally built into that QR code. And it's not just the QR code. It's the model of decentralization that's actually valuable and important, imperative for humanity. So
what do I do with this QR code beside my contact?
Nothing right now. You notice how you can edit it? Click on edit, top right corner. And do you notice where it says clear pay address?
No, I don't have edit. Oh no, edit's at the bottom.
Clear bottom right corner, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
You see where it says wallet address?
Yes.
On yours, it just has one thing. On mine, I don't know if you can see mine. I'm actually going to turn my screen share off. On mine, it actually has, so what I did was here, as I clicked on the wallet, so I can scan someone's wallet like I did with hers, or I can just click on it and say, let's see. Notice how I can have, so let's say I want to have Ethereum, or I want to have Digital World, or I want to have rewards. These are all different networks, but that same contact can actually have multiple addresses. Do you see those addresses?
Oh my God, I cannot believe that.
Yeah, when the world actually figures out all of the innovation and importance behind this, hopefully, and this goes right back to your husband's answer. And I've had a lot of people say, wow, this is the best kept secret I've ever heard of. And you know what? That's a good thing right now. Because like for instance, one individual launched a version of these phones. So I won't even be specific because I'm going to explain some things that are interesting. So one individual took one of these brands and launched it. Okay. Within 1 week, they went from 0 in revenue to 6.8 million in revenue. Okay. And the following week, they were shut down. The centralized systems are built in such a way where it's kind of like crabs. People actually pull other people down as they progress in life. And I'm not talking about monetary value but what I'm talking, actually, I'm not sharing my screen, so you're actually not seeing it again, dang it. Anyhow, the point that I'm driving at is it's important that at the right time, this model is brought to the world. But when it's brought to the world, it has to work flawlessly. Like I wonder if I should test this with somebody else. Anybody else want to throw me a QR code? I want to figure out why I did it. Okay, I'll do it again. I don't think there's something that's, but I'll go ahead and try it again. I'm going to blow this away. You don't need to put it up. I've already got your address.
Okay.
But I didn't add it to contacts. I've just added it to a clipboard. So if I added it to contacts, now I've actually had two different versions of ClearPay. You notice how my wallet can actually see multiple different types of technologies, from Ethereum to Ripple or Stellar to digital. By the way, those technologies are what the future financial systems will actually use. The ones that I was pointing out here, and it's not Ethereum. Yeah, I'm still seeing the same
Stellar
issue.
and
Ripple.
Ripple.
I'm going to try.
You mentioned last week something about a new technology that was coming out that was even better than Ripple. Are you?
Well, I believe that's what the digital world is, because the digital world is truly decentralized, whereas Ripple is actually a company that is centralized,
Right.
that has a leadership team that actually, this isn't working. I'm going to blow this away. If someone else could give me a QR code, either of the Jameses, and it may be on my side that's the problem too. Okay, so let's see. I see Steve. It's blurry. You got to get your camera on it, not your head. You probably have to turn your filter off behind you. You have a filter on your Steve. You gotta turn your background filter off. Anybody else got a QR code up? James?
Could I use my QR code?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so, oops.
Now, if you have an asset in the digital world, you can just add it and I can send that to you. And that runs on the digital world network. Like this stuff that I'm sending you, it'll be in a different animal. So go ahead and pull that up. Yep, there you go. Perfect. It's hard to see. Let's see here.
Oh, it's because of the lighting, I guess.
It's really blurry, but let me see if I can snag it. Just kind of hold still. Kind of tilted or something's not. Okay, got it. Notice your balance right now.
Yeah, it says total clear rewards 0.
Okay, so show that to everybody. Oh, it failed again. It's failed. Wally, will you let Tyler know that the latest build is breaking? I'm gonna try you again, Karen. Anyhow, I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty dark where I am. So the sun is almost down. We're gonna wrap up. Karen, I've already I copied yours over, so we'll get you some sent. And this system, the key is we've got to be able to build it, stand it up, and it's not going to be perfect as we're doing that. But as we get to a certain level, the redundancy should kick in, and the opposite of entropy should actually solve a lot of the scaling issues. Theoretically, this model should scale worldwide. theoretically. We've never done it before, but in all theory, it should. So with that being said, I want to thank those that have patience, those that are willing to test, those that are willing to have faith, and those that are willing to literally just continue to learn about this. And especially those that stand up to say, you know what, because there's a lot of people on the support side that they actually were just like you, and each one of you, they come in and they say, there's something here, and I want to actually use my time to drive awareness, not just tell people about it, but I actually want to help it become reality. And it's not been easy. I can tell you the last 120 days have been one hurdle over another hurdle. I mean, even this morning, even last week, it was crazy. Like what the latest hoop is a lot of merchants, because everyone on this call is not used to using crypto-based assets. They're used to using, assets that it's like a Visa, or it's like cash, or it's like, they're not. So the point being is we have to use merchants, because the centralized system centralize these merchants to be able to get USD, so US dollars. And these folks, I'm convinced they now know who we are, because just like your husband's point was, it's like these guys are just gonna be taken down just like the rest of them. But it's literally, and I won't mention names, if you're already aware of what's happening with these processors, you already know what's going on. From PayPal to any of the merchants, whether it's Visa-based, MasterCard, American Express, Stripe, any of the big ones, literally, they have a new hoop for us the next week. I mean, last week on Thursday, we had to send in an ID with a page that had the date, with a face that matched it, and then in front of each product line. So they had us show the product, then show the inventory, then show the imaging process. I mean, you tell me. So what are we, 13 years in business, customers in 150 countries, in 86 languages. We've never had to do one thing like that ever for over a decade. And now it's like a weekly occurrence. We got another one yesterday morning. So the last one was last Thursday, and actually was this morning. So Thursday to Tuesday, different hoop. And you know what they do when they say they're not going to, when those problems pop up, they just stop sending funds. Right now we have hundreds of thousands of dollars locked up with these folks. And for us, that's the Clear ecosystems. Some of these other ecosystems have millions of dollars locked up. You talk about fair, you talk about right, I mean, it is wrong. And then on top of that, we figure out, and not only is it the financial providers, but it's the other networks that finally figure out these guys are doing something that will actually change. So think about it. Hewlett Packard Enterprise actually pre-installs ClearOS server. So when you look at, I'm just going to say HPE ClearOS server, or actually just say, just like that. So that's the ClearOS site, but I actually want to show you the Hewlett Packard site.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Thanks for the heads up. Some people just let me keep cranking and I don't even know that I'm not doing it right. So I literally just searched ClearOS and HPE. You can see this is on Hewlett Packard Enterprise site. This is the #1 server in the world that is pre-installing ClearOS server. Goes through all the details. Literally, you can actually download it right from their website. You can, I mean, there's features and functions that is just amazing. It's so if you, and not only that, let's go in and search.
They actually want the ClearOS server?
Well, they did. Like you can buy these. Let's see. Like this is HPE. Let's see. This is just community site around, ClearOS loves HPE. HPE loves ClearOS. I mean, it's just this. You can go through. My point is this is a big centralized company that they want to innovate. They want to do the right things. The individuals do. Are they controlled by other things? Yes, no. Have we had direct issues here? I'm mentioning them because we haven't had a problem. But it's only a matter of time until there's other ecosystems, and I can't mention some of these other ecosystems, but what I can say is, let's see, no, it's not even in this one. We will be breaking apart voice, text, data, and hotspot from different carriers from around the world. By the way, I'm going to tell you just real fast, for those of you that have stayed in here this long, there will not be subscriptions in the future. There will not be some of the basic services that you're already familiar with. There will be new products and new prices that will come out here soon. I won't go into the details of this, but jump into future dialogue. We announce these things, you know, there's monthly meetings, town halls, and then there are weekly kind of just Q&As. So I know there's other questions, thoughts, comments, but we'll wrap up. We're actually 40 minutes over, and in my world, it is the sun's almost down and all that fun stuff. But appreciate your prayers, appreciate your love, appreciate your support, and your questions. It'll help drive the awareness from the grassroots, which is what this needs. Right now, it doesn't need big headlines. In time, that'll come. The digital world is very important and key. If you have a Clear phone, use Clear Life, update it, and try and log in. Once you log in, if you want to create a company, if you want to create a digital asset, you can. There's no how-tos, there's no documentation. And once you do it the first time, or once you do it, you'll actually use native to create them, which is a digital asset in the digital world. But you're actually interacting with the blockchain. And what I mean by that is what you do has a timestamp, and it can be seen by everyone. So just be aware of that, which in all reality, transparency is actually what creates the honesty that can actually come from people operating in a digital ecosystem without centralized systems or control. So go back to your hubby, have the conversation, come back with your next good, brilliant question next week. Appreciate your time, and hopefully these recordings went well. See you later. Much love, everybody.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Night, night, everyone.